Well, hello everybody. Welcome. I know we never, ever, ever, probably in the history of America's Mom, have we ever gone live on a Wednesday night ever. But the information that we have, this topic is so incredibly important. And every day that I see the gaslighting go on in the state of Colorado, I just think I don't know that I can keep passively sitting by so quietly about these topics and the issues that are dramatically impacting people in Colorado. The gaslighting has been absolutely extraordinary under Jared Polis, the current governor. He is the first openly homosexual governor in America, which I don't think anybody would really care about if he wasn't also a total tyrannical dictator who literally gaslights the people left and right. Just this past week, he blamed the ranchers for the wolf's introduction. he's he's quite a story. He is quite a bucket of problems, and I remember early on in his tyrannical reign over Colorado, I was told that he was basically like a libertarian. Really sophisticated businessman. He had served in Congress. He bought his spot in the Colorado Department of Education for $1 million. And then I would hear other people go on to say that really he had bought his spot as governor, wrote two massively huge $1 million checks, multi-million-dollar checks, and voila, he was the governor of Colorado. So just kind of a reminder of what is happening and why we're talking about him when we have so many other people here besides just Colorado, because he is the head of the Governors Association of America now. He's the head of the Governors Association of America. And if we had time, I would walk you through all of the travesties that he's committed against the people of Colorado, but we don't. The one issue we're going to focus on tonight is what has been happening with the children. What has been going on in the state of Colorado with the mutilation, the support by the government, and the lack of real, honest, actual mental health support for children in the state of Colorado. And I can think of nobody better to have on tonight to talk about this than a parent who has been the recipient of Jared Polis's policies. See, everything comes down to policies. This is what we always are talking about. You may not like politics, you may not like the mudslinging and the slander and all that kind of stuff. I get it, whatever. But the policies are coming after all of us, and that's what we've been experiencing for the last 5 years and 6 years now in Colorado. Is horrendous policies that literally have middle class Coloradans on their knees trying to figure out how they are going to make ends meet. And we're not even talking about the economics tonight of what Jared Polis has done to that state. So I wanted to have a parent come on. We've had her on before because the story again is just so nefarious, and it's happening to many parents, not only in Colorado but across the country, and they don't know. They don't know why their child has changed so much. They don't know why they seemingly all of a sudden have a total personality shift. And I think it's really important to understand what's happening in the public school system, what's happening by the legislation and your legislatures. I think it's really important to understand that the governors are pushing this all across the country. And if Jared Polis is at the helm of the Governors Association of America, and by the way, also has consequently decided to go to war with Donald Trump, yes, go check out his Twitter. He's decided he's going to take a firm stance against President Trump. He's ready to go to war. He actually was inciting the Denver mayor, who's been called out many times for the unbelievable mess and train wreck of Denver, Colorado. Now, Mike Johnson, he Mike Johnson thought he literally was going to take on the federal government and the National Guard, truly, when Trump came to Aurora and said, we're getting rid of all of these illegal cartel members. Yeah, yeah. You can trust and count on Jared Polis and his lackeys in Colorado to go to war with Polis, or to go to war with Trump over the cartel taking residence in Colorado. I mean, that's literally the nature of Jared Polis. So I want to stay focused as much as we can, because all of the videos I've been seeing Polis come out with are really disturbing. And again, it's major, major gaslighting on the people of Colorado. We've lived under his policies. We've lived under his tyrannical reign. We lived under COVID. We lived under the abuse of our children. We lived and have continued to live under him passing the buck constantly and running people around in circles to try to figure out what to do to actually help their children. And So when we see videos like this, I'm going to just share this with you guys. When you see a video like this of Jared Polis, and understanding that Fox News constantly supports this guy, constantly props him up. Dana Perino is like his big personal cheerleader. You might remember she served in the Bush administration and now has a show on Fox or whatever. Never has had any children, by the way. She just has dogs and constantly elevates this guy. It's sickening, along with the Five also will put him on and act as though he's the savior of Colorado. But the people who live in Colorado know better. So take a look at this. This is one of the videos he just did just this past week. Oh, yeah, he's so amazing. He's eliminated over 200 executive orders and cut through red tape to make Colorado run more efficiently, except for the lack of efficiency in Colorado is directly on his shoulders. The massive rise in the cost of living in Colorado is directly on his shoulders. The lack of any kind of care for our forests in Colorado is directly on his shoulders. This guy is a walking hypocritical liar. And so we just got to, I just can't tell you, this is literally what he does. He walks around in a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, pretending that he's just one of us. He's just one of the conservative country folk here in the state of Colorado. But a couple of things to keep in mind before we bring Erin on. And number one, when he was just 10 years old, he was actually in Russia and he was learning the stock exchange on their stock exchange floor. He was buying and selling equipment from a very young age from Russia and making money. That's how he started. That's how he began learning. It's his own words, not mine. When he became the governor of Colorado, his first topic of agenda, this is 2019. I just want to share this with you all. In 2019, he decided his main priority was your children. He had a vision for your children, and it was all about LGBTQ. It was all about, quote, equity for children. It was all about getting preschool for children, free preschool, free kindergarten, right? Because it's all about the children. You can guess when a politician says that, it probably isn't. What it's turned into, this is March 19th of 2019, where he talks about his vision for Colorado and what he wants to do for the children, okay? He said he wanted to make it more livable for families and really cater to the families of Colorado. And everything but that has happened under his tenure. It's 6 years now we've been living under this guy, and it has progressively gotten absolutely psychotic to the point where Colorado now is advocating for a stream of income for the state, the mutilation of children. So I want to share this with you. Again, our guest tonight is a mother who has firsthand experienced Jared Polis's policies. And I can tell you, as someone who attempted to speak with Polis personally, I've never seen a guy run so fast from a group of mothers. He was surrounded by four very fit and very handsome, I might add, bodyguards, and who protected and covered him while he ran for the elevator against the mothers. And I think you're going to see this consistent story play out as we talk more about him tonight. So take a listen to this video. Our special guest is going to be joining us in just a moment, but I think you need to know exactly what's been going on in this state. And don't let anybody gaslight you any longer. Please make sure to hit the share button. You're going to want to hear everything that Erin Lee has to share.
2 years ago, I was a sleepwalking, naive mom. I had no idea the evil that was coming for our kids until one day my little 12-year-old daughter was invited to stay after school for an art club. But when she got there, it was actually Gender and Sexuality Awareness Club. And an outside activist had been invited in to teach my daughter about transgenderism, telling her that if she's not fully comfortable in her biological sex, it's because she's trans. She taught her that queer is a term to use while she's still figuring out her sexuality. She taught her about puberty blockers, suicide, polyamory, and she told her that parents might not be safe and it's okay to lie to them about where you are. Thank God my daughter came home and told us everything that happened to her that day. But the damage was already done. She had been convinced that her normal discomfort as a 12-year-old girl means she's transgender. And thank God that we came together as a family to get her through this confusion, and she has now completely desisted the trans identity. I'm Erin for Parental Rights, and I'm inviting you and your family to pray, fast, and stand with us at your state capitol on April 13th, 2024. Don't mess with
Erin, I love this video. More than that, though, I love the incredible work that you have done to shed light on a really serious situation that's been unfolding in Colorado for the last 5 years. And to hear this story and understand this, you weren't really involved in politics or anything like that prior to what happened with your daughter, were you?
No, and I have to admit that I'm one of the moderates, or, at the time thought I was moderate, who got by Jared Polis. I actually moved here from Florida in 2018 thinking Colorado would be comparable, and I voted for the guy. I was this libertarian leaning, proudly apolitical. I just wanted both sides to like me. I thought I was right in the middle, and I thought he aligned with my values. And now, we're very much reaping the consequences of that vote. It's been, as you said, a tyrannical 6 years, and my family was almost destroyed by the policies that he started putting in place as soon as he was elected governor.
I think one of the things people don't understand when it comes to Colorado, especially when we have this guy running around in his blue tennis shoes and his cowboy hat, just eating green chilies and eating peaches and Palisade, is how destructive he's been. Everything that's been contrary to the family unit, to the nuclear family unit, he has advanced. I want to start just by going over the bills that have been passed. These are the same bills that are being floated across the country. So wherever you're at listening here tonight, you're going to want to start looking to see what your legislature has done and which of these bills have been passed in your state. But let's start with the modernization of mental health care bill.
Yeah, so in 2019, he actually signed two laws into place, which my family was personally affected by and found out the hard way. The first one, 1120, which lowered the age of mental health consent to 12. So now 12-year-olds consent to their own health care from prescribing doctors, and no parent knowledge or consent is required. And they're teaching our kids about this law in their classroom. Like, my daughter knew about this before I did. And then the sister bill to that was the anti-conversion therapy bill, 1129, which made it illegal for any licensed therapist to do anything but affirm a gender confused child. So if a child comes in and says, I don't quite feel like a girl, or I think I'm transgender, the therapist is legally obligated to only say, oh, you're transgender. Yes, you are, and affirm that perceived identity from the child, or risk a fine and losing their license. And there's actually a case that's been appealed to the Supreme Court of a brave counselor who's challenging that law because it's a violation of free speech amongst, a violation of parents, a violation of trust, a violation of these kids and their natural right to grow up free from harm.
And really, it's a violation of reality. What we have found with this, it's interesting. I've been listening to Blair White a little bit more. I'm reading through the book Trans right now, and it's interesting to me to see, when we talk about big pharma and the push that they have been in this industry to create patients for life. We've got obviously other conditions that are going on that are creating patients for life, but this is one where literally once you start down this road of transition and you're preparing a 5-year-old, right, socially transitioning 5-year-olds, and then when they're about 10, or even earlier, some people putting them on hormones and hormone therapy to block their puberty, basically puberty blockers. It speaks for itself. You're actually sterilizing these children, and they're not talking about that at all. They really aren't. I think that when people are trying to be compassionate and they're trying to be understanding of a child who seems like they're going through a difficult time, they are not considering at all the reality of what this is going to do to them truly down the road, the real backlash. Can you talk a little bit about that, especially when it pertains to this bill? It's HB 191120, and this was a modernizing. They called it a modernizing of mental health care act, and so it sounds great, right? We're just updating things, but what you said was it allowed for children 12 years old and up to start making decisions for themselves on their own mental health care without their parents. What does the backlash really look like for that?
Yeah, well, it's a domino effect. That bill just opened the door for other future bills, which have now been passed, to be put in place. And the Colorado Medicaid website actually recommends that you start puberty blockers at age 8. So with our tax dollars, public funded insurance is recommending that we start these kids on sterilization drugs. They are cancer drugs that have adverse effects for even adult cancer patients. They are sterilization drugs that they give to sex offenders in prison. So these are very dangerous drugs with very serious adverse effects like bone loss. They're cancer causing, they stunt brain development. And they're recommending that we give them to kids starting at age 8, and that essentially the taxpayers, even in some cases, pay for it.
Colorado is absolutely a trans sanctuary state. That's another law that Jared Polis put forth in 2023, I believe, that made us a trans and abortion sanctuary state. They coupled it all together. And we've become this refuge for parents who want to bring their children to a safe place to mutilate them, especially in these single parent or these custody situations. There's some really nightmare situations that have happened here in Colorado where one parent fled here to this state and was able to mutilate their minor child without the other parent's consent. But another law that was a domino effect of that 1120 is 1003 that was passed in 2023. And we showed up in droves to protest this bill. But what it did, and a lot of parents don't know it even exists. I'm sorry, it's 2023. They now mandated a mental health screening for all 6th through 12th graders. That's 11-year-olds to 18-year-olds. And the results go to the school, not the parents. And if the child is deemed high risk, which guess what? I've taken the assessment, they're all deemed high risk. Any kid with any normal, adverse reaction to growing up, like discomfort with puberty, is deemed high risk. And they're referred to the state's mental health program called iMatter without the parents' knowledge. And because of this law that enabled 12-year-olds to pursue their own health care, parents don't have a right to know. They don't have a right to know that their child's been assessed, what the results are, or that their child is seeing the state's mental health counselors, who, by the way, are all LGBTQ affirming, and some of them even advertise being sex work positive, which they're child psychiatrists in every situation on this program.
Let's take a look at this actually, just so people understand. I mean, once you see the marketing, you understand right away what they're promoting, what they're looking for. I recognize that there's a parents portal, but I guarantee the parents are not knowing about this nor using the parent portal. Let's just take a look at the toolkit for a minute. I'm always very curious about, we're gonna have to download this stuff. So, okay, we won't do that. We'll go back, hang on. I'm always very curious about what their curriculum is, what they're doing. This is the actual accessibility at the Behavioral Health Administration here in Colorado. This is actually where they're utilizing the governor's site. They're utilizing Colorado governance in order to make sure people are not being discriminated against and that they are having access to all of this information. I think this is really interesting because, again, if you don't know the law and you don't know what your rights are, if you don't know where government ends and your rights really they overwhelmingly are at the mercy of the government right now in Colorado, I guess is what I would say. And if you don't understand that, if you don't understand that the government owns your child, if they're in a public school from 12 years old up, you're going to be in for a very rude awakening when you realize all this legal verbiage, all of the things that have been put in place are to block you from being able to protect your child. I think one of the most devastating things I heard was when they were passing the non-legal name change bill, which, by the way, criminalizes teachers if they don't use the right name for a child who's decided they're, Brad today, Barbara tomorrow, whatever the case may be. That you had an elected official sitting there saying that she was taking other people's children home into her home and affirming them without the parents' knowledge. This is an elected representative in Colorado, in Boulder, Colorado, who was bragging that she was the only safety net that these queer children had. And so it behooved her to advocate for this particular bill so that she could continue to have access to children without their parents' knowledge or consent. This is all legal in Colorado. You're not going to find a way out of this unless if you do what you guys have done, which is actually taken it to court and tried to sue the school districts for doing this stuff to your children, as well as the government for passing these laws and trying to point out the unconstitutionality of it. But so far, we're not able to make a dent in Colorado right now.
Yeah. Senator Faith Winter, just to call her out and put her name on everyone's radar. Yeah. She actually described her crash couch that she has for other people's children. When they don't feel comfortable talking to their parents about the fact that they're trans, they can just come sleep on her couch. And she was also wasted drunk during all of the last session, to the point where she entered rehab about 2 weeks after making that statement. So she, on that plane, is also not safe to be watching other people's children without their knowledge. I'm sure parents wouldn't appreciate that she was drunk 24/7.
Wow. Well, It makes a lot more sense. I mean, you have to be on something in order to be literally supporting the physical mutilation of children. You have to be doing something that's altering your brain. Speaking of altering your brain, what about, let's go back to the mental health screening for just a moment. This is for, so parents in Colorado can be well informed. This they ask all kinds of questions on these health screenings. And by the end of it, your child does walk away from that assessment believing that they are probably depressed and apparently now transgender. Depression was when my kid was in seventh grade or ninth grade rather, and they did one of these without my consent. If I had known now if I knew then what I know now, I would have sued the school. I didn't understand how big of a deal this was. And in fact, they're using mental health screenings that they already know are not approved by Epic, which is Epic is basically, it's all of you guys can go on there now. Once you know what tools they're utilizing to screen your children's mental health, go on there and compare it with Epic. Epic is used by the state of Colorado and governments all across the country to determine whether or not these programs even work. Or do they have high recidivism rate after they go through the program? And unfortunately, at that time, just a few years ago, the programs they were using to do mental health screenings had high recidivism attached to them. So children who may be cutters or maybe, so having these dark thoughts or depression or whatever became more so after doing their mental health evaluations. So parents really need to understand this is not only are they using this to figure out what children are vulnerable, as was your situation. They targeted your daughter. They knew she was vulnerable, and they knew that they could mold her they thought they could mold her anyway very quickly into what they wanted for her. But do you think that they're using the screenings to identify more children that they can target for trans ideology?
100%. In fact, my daughter expressed that her teacher was pretty upfront about she was looking for certain students who would want to be part of her club. So she wasn't even shy about it. And this survey really goes hand in hand with the Healthy Kids Colorado survey, which there's an equivalent in every state, I'm sure, which has been around for probably as long as Jared Polis has, that surveys these kids and asks 7 different times if they're transgender with like 9 different answer options. And even my school board, who's radical, has said there's no way to get accurate evidence or accurate data from these surveys because you're relying on, the questions are confusing and you're relying on kids to self-identify. But that actually turned out a percentage that my school district claims 47% of the kids in our school district or our county are LGBTQ. So clearly not accurate results. And they're leading our kids into this.
That's pretty wild. Okay, tell me about what happened with this another bill that they passed. So just to keep this in total here in Colorado, immediately was the modernizing of the mental health care bill. This means 12-year-olds and up, you don't need parental consent to seek any kind of psychiatric care or mental health care. And then we had ban on conversion therapy. You cannot offer anything but affirmation. We have the mandates for mental health screening. Mandate means they must do it. Non-legal name change bill. Let's talk about this for a second. For the Democrats who supposedly love teachers, this bill in particular puts teachers in a position to be criminalized if they're not willing to go along with this nonsense. What does this actually mean?
Again, it's forced speech. This requires teachers of all kinds. They included charter schools explicitly because here in Colorado, we have great charter school options and they are under attack by our radical legislature and governor. But what this essentially does is requires teachers to call a child whatever they want to be called, no age distinction, no requirement to tell parents. And when we pushed back on my state senator, Janice Marchman, we said, well, what if 5-year-old Billy wants to be Sally and his parents say, don't do that? And she said, well, we're going to respect Sally. We're going to respect her wishes. And so she made it clear that even if a 5-year-old's parents say, you don't do that with my child, we're going to do it anyway. And she claimed that it was already civil rights law, which it's not, which shows her gross misinterpretation of law and her, inadequacy as a legislator. But she is representative of our radical supermajority of leftists. It's not just Jared Polis. He's got a whole army of people who push these laws, and we can't even play defense on the really bad bills. We can't even get an amendment through in Colorado. That's why my organization ran ballot initiatives as an alternative, because we're up against a beast and we are losing at these laws. And they count on parents to not know what's happening. Like you said, you
Right.
wish you had known then. They count on us to be uninformed. And they name these laws something that sounds good or that sounds misleading that we don't look into, because who has time to look at all 12,000 pages of laws that come through every session? We don't. And they are just
Right.
ramming them through one after another and building upon what they've already passed.
That's what people, I think, needs to be understood. They're building upon based on their agenda. And interestingly enough, Jared Polis has had a network that he's been a pipeline of LGBTQ activists that he's been grooming for political work for a decade now. And I mean, there's actually a website committed to it. I didn't think to pull that up before now, but he literally has been mentoring them for political office. So then they run for office, or they become aides in the Capitol building, or they take on some kind of government role where they can assist in pushing these bills forward, and then also regulating these bills and making sure people are in compliance and they're falling in line. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. This is a very grievous bill that was passed, and this is the one where I think Democrats really, please listen and please understand. When we talked about should boys be allowed in girls' locker rooms and in girls' sports, rather, overwhelmingly 6 out of 7 Democrats said no. Okay, in the poll that we did for Moms for America, should they be allowed? So these were Democrats, these were very left-leaning Democrats, and they said no. Well, how about this one? Allowing transgender felons to legally change their name is called Tierra's Law. What is the consequences of this particular bill? This is for the adults as well as children.
Well, let's start with Tierra. Tierra is a man, a registered felon who has violations with children. Inappropriate behavior with children is one of his convictions. And he also runs a child drag ring in the state of Colorado. So he has minor children, little boys, who he dresses up as girls to dance sexually for tips from adults, usually in gay bars, like here in Fort Collins, where I live. They do them every Sunday morning at the adult gay bar that is usually 18 plus. And they have these children dancing around sexually for tips. And so that's Tierra. Tierra runs the child drag ring of Colorado. And our radical legislature named this bill after him. And brought him in and his parade of, trans supporters to push this through. But essentially, this allows felons to erase their criminal history. And a lot of people have said, well, you can search them by social security number. Well, the average Joe does not have access to a stranger's social security number. So they can come to Colorado, change their name, assume the opposite sex legally, and their entire criminal history is essentially erased. It's incredibly dangerous, especially considering we see all these accounts of inappropriate people in our school districts. We had a bus driver here who was hired with a child abuse conviction who verbally, emotionally, physically, and sexually abused nonverbal 5 to 10-year-olds for 3 months before anyone did anything about it.
Oh my
And of course,
gosh.
our DA
Oh my gosh.
slapped him on the wrist for that. But this is exactly the kind of person that we are enabling to have access to our children, and we have no idea that they have a criminal history.
And now you never will. You will not know, parents in Colorado. You will not know if the new preschool teacher is someone with a background, a criminal background, or already as an essay or a deviant. You will not know. And the fact that Jared Polis was willing once again to put his LGBTQIA alphabet soup ahead of the health and well-being of the citizens he's supposed to be governing is really incredible. Their safety, their peace of mind, parents' peace of mind. I go back to that original article in 2019 where he said, "I'm building a Colorado for all." But that it was not true. And I think everybody understands at this point, Jared Polis ran for all of these offices and to secure power in Colorado because he was mad. Quite frankly, he was mad that Coloradans don't believe in special rights for anybody. This is, I grew up here. I mean, this has been a live and let live state, no doubt. And what we care about is work and character, your work ethic and your character. If you're a decent person and you work hard, you're going to be fine in Colorado. But what we don't like is special rights for special, for special classes of people, especially when it's going to hurt Coloradans at large. So he got his feelings hurt when Colorado refused to pass some bills that he thought would protect homosexuals in Colorado. And since then, it's been game on. It's been 25 years now of game on to Colorado to turn the state blue and then destroy it systematically, destroy the nuclear family, destroy the innocence of children. He says children are our number one, like our greatest asset, but it's not asset. It was a word like property, like merchandise. I can't remember the word that he used, but I mean, he doesn't have a connection with children. He doesn't have a connection with the reality of what it takes to be a family in this state. So when you think about the next one, this is just crazy. Colorado trans and abortion sanctuary forced us to pay for it and attacked the crisis pregnancy centers. Tell us more about this. It's Senate Bill 188, 189, and 190. What did this do to people in Colorado who don't agree with Jared Polis's agenda?
Yeah, just to build on what you said, he's a snake oil salesman. I mean, like I said, I moved here, I was libertarian minded. That was the facade that he put on. So many of us were completely deceived by him. And he plays it good. I mean, he's a salesman. He plays it well. Even Vivek and Elon have retweeted his things like in appreciation for him shredding these executive orders. He's really good at playing the part. But yeah, he passed these Senate bills 2 years ago that made us a trans and abortion sanctuary state where people are escaping here to get their medical procedures, killing their unborn child and mutilating their children. I actually, in the last week, have had 3 parents from other states send me websites of organizations that have popped up in the last year or so that their sole purpose is relocating people to Colorado, relocating the TQ plus population to Colorado, because legislatively, arguably, we are the most extreme state in the country. I know you think California and Washington, but California has shut down, and even Gavin Newsom has vetoed some of the laws that we have passed here in Colorado. For example, my friend, Representative Brandy Bradley, ran a bill that would have just made buying a child for sex a felony, because right now it's a slap on the wrist. You can buy a child for sex and you virtually have no consequences. And she tried to run a bill just to say that should be a felony. That should clearly be a felony. And the Democrats voted it down on a party line. Even Gavin Newsom wasn't willing to sign that into law. So we're arguably the most radical state, and organizations are popping up to move people here to continue to push us down that radical path.
We're going to be highlighting on Facebook. There's many trans family pages, and you're exactly right. I've been going through them the last couple of days, and they are saying Colorado is your sanctuary state. You need to pack up and flee to a safe state, all the way from New Hampshire, obviously Texas, encouraging people to move to Colorado so you can get your medication. And if I could just say too, the fear mongering that goes on with these people, what they tell these children, there's nothing natural at all about what they're doing with the transgender medical. It's like I have to think about this because I do want to be careful, because I'm not interested in just being hyperbolic. When they say be who you are, there's no way to be trans without putting all of this medical hormone therapy, without medical intervention. We call it interference in our family. There's no way to be trans without interference. It would never naturally occur. You would never naturally start looking that way. You have to go through all of these horrendous avenues in order to take that persona on. There's nothing natural about it. And when you've said over and over that you are here, and gays against groomers have said the same thing. The trans movement is determined to literally stamp out and stomp out any gay boys or men or women growing up, boys and girls growing up into gay men or women. What do you think about that? How does that relate? You've been so involved in this. How does that relate to the transgender movement?
Yeah, I've spent the last 3 years working with parents who are going through what we went through, whose child suddenly believes that they're born in the wrong body. And the reality is that's not possible. No child is born in the wrong body. When people say, oh, believe trans kids, support trans kids means telling a child they were born wrong. And ultimately, it is always a path towards Mengele-like experimental mutilation of their bodies. And so we absolutely have to reject that narrative. I'm so grateful for Gays Against Groomers. They've really stepped up in this space to say, look, we don't consent to the TQ plus. We don't consent to being lumped in with that. And the reality is, if you just leave these kids alone, a lot of them will probably just grow up and be gay. Like they're feminine boys, they're masculine girls. But also about 50% of the kids who get captured by this ideology are autistic. They're just quirky, they're artsy, they're misfits. They don't identify with what all the other girls are doing because they're just, they're not mainstream about things. That's what happened to my daughter. She's not labeled as autistic, but she was quirky and different, and they took advantage of that. There is never happiness at the end of this road. You know, people say, oh, do it or they'll kill themselves. You have to go along with it or they'll be unhappy. They'll hate you. They'll kill themselves. They're never happier. In my 3 years of helping parents and children get through this, even the psychological transition, even before you even get into the medical piece, which thank God we stopped it before my daughter got there, although they tried behind our back at 12 years old. Even the psychological transition is so damaging that it's just never a happier road for these kids. It is not the kind, compassionate, or loving thing to do to tell a child they were born in the wrong body.
It's interesting listening to Blair White, reading back through these stories of people's transition and how very little time was actually given to them. Blair just said recently 30 minutes max. He went in for an appointment with the doctor. They basically talked to him for 30 minutes and then he was given estrogen. And even he's like, that was weird, you know. It's weird. It's weird that they didn't ask me like, how am I? What's my, you know, what is my mental state right now? They just wanted to get him into the system. And, you know, Blair will be on some type of hormones for the rest of his life in order to maintain this appearance. And so this idea that there's some kind of real care going on here is insane. Are you familiar? I'm sure you are with an orchiectomy.
The removal of the testicles,
Yeah.
which they're doing to minors, which parents are doing to minors as an alternative to paying for puberty blockers. They think it's cheaper to just castrate these boys than to pay for the puberty blockers for the remainder of their childhood.
What is the age that you're seeing this recommendation be given for?
I've seen kids as young as 15 getting the testicle removal, but I've seen girls as young as 13 getting a double mastectomy. So surgeries are happening to minor. I mean, in 13, I was still playing in the dirt at 13. I wasn't thinking about any of this stuff. It absolutely did not come from the child's mind that they wanted to cut off their own body parts. That was planted there. And again, these parents are bullied into going along with it. In some cases, it's what I call transhausen by proxy. It's the parent who is pushing it, who wants the attention. You know, trans kids are the new designer handbag. But in most cases, parents are put in a position like I was, where their child's already been convinced this is who they are. And you're told if you don't go along with it, they'll kill themselves. If you don't go along with it, you could risk losing custody of your children for not affirming them. That has happened. And I've counted now 13 states. I've connected with parents who've had their children forcibly removed for not being willing to medically transition them in Indiana, in Montana, in Arizona. It is not just happening in blue states like Colorado.
Wow. Are you all listening to this? 13 states where children were removed from their parents because their parents would not affirm trans ideology. In spite of all of the people who are detransitioning right now, who are coming out very vocally saying this was not the path forward. They did not talk to me. They did not seek counseling for me. They just simply started packing me full of hormones. And before I knew it, I'm agreeing to surgeries like orchiectomies. I mean, this is absolutely insane.
Yeah, a great case to look into is Clementine in California. She's suing Dr. Joanna Kennedy, who got her into medical transition after 30 minutes and made a comment publicly. It's out there on the internet, something like, oh, if you want breasts, you can just go put them back on later. Like, go ahead and remove them. And if you want to put them back on later, you can, which these girls can no longer breastfeed their children. You can't just put them back on once you've mutilated your body. And it is a vicious looking mutilation scar that is left on these girls. And they're so traumatized. The detransitioners I've connected with, they're so traumatized from it.
I don't know how people go back to this idea that this is what love looks like when they say would you rather have a trans child or a dead child? That this is what love looks like when at every corner they're being groomed into this. The last bill that you've shared with me that Colorado has just passed is 1911-92. And I suppose this was from a couple years ago, actually, but this is, you can't graduate in the state of Colorado anymore unless if you know gay and lesbian history.
Starting at 6 years old.
It's so important. It's so important. Except you're not going to hear about how Harvey Milk was actually a pedophile and was grooming and doing all sorts of things to young boys. You're not going to hear that part of gay and lesbian history. Okay. But you're going to hear about transgender and queer starting in actually the first grade. And then going back to Jared Polis too, and this grooming process, this brainwashing, preschool, what was free preschool really all about, do you think?
Oh, it's just one year sooner that they'd getting the kids into these government indoctrination camps. It's exactly what there are. 30% of kids in Colorado can read and do math at grade level. Like, let's start there. These kids can't even read and do math at a basic human functioning level. But here we are passing laws that mandates you must teach them about transgender and queer starting at 6 years old.
Yeah.
So this law was passed in 2019. It was part of that radical bundle. Jared Polis got in and he pushed through all this crazy, unprecedentedly radical legislation. This was one of them that it then went to the State Board of Ed, where Jared Polis used to sit, which has a Democratic majority. And despite parents showing up in droves to say, don't you start this any lower than fourth grade, because sex ed you can't even start in Colorado lower than fourth grade, they voted to start it in first grade. So it is now state mandated. Every school district must participate, including charter schools. There is no opt-out option. They made sure to make that charter schools could not opt out of this state standard. You must teach lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer starting in first grade history, which is social studies, history and civics class. And they even put out sample lessons made by Colorado teachers for Colorado teachers that got into, in the first grade lesson, Jared Polis' sexuality, not his accomplishments. No.
Yes.
We're just going to dive into who he sleeps with. They even went so far as to put in a lesson about sex work, about the importance of sex work for transgender children. You can't make this stuff up. On the Colorado Department of Ed website, people should go look it up. It's radical.
Dana Perino, I hope you're listening. Your buddy Jared Polis wants first graders to know what his sexuality is, who he prefers to sleep with. And it's very true. I've seen it. I've seen all of these documents. I've seen exactly what they're teaching. One thing about the preschool agenda was this: any school rather in the state of Colorado that was receiving any type of state funding, period, Christian schools, private schools, any kind of grants that have been given to them by the state, they then became mandated to teach gender ideology to preschoolers. Now, of course, I was like, well, how are you going to do that? Like, what does that even look like? Things like the genderbread man, that sort of thing. In Carbondale, Colorado, Pastor Jim Wright, who stood up to this and stood up to the state and thwarted all of this, they were able to get out of it. Other schools also, classical education schools, they just had to return the state funding. So any school that's receiving state funding and you have free preschool, your preschoolers are learning about gender ideology because it is mandated to receive the money.
And it's so subtle. I can't express that enough. Like, what happened to us was pretty, I would say, extreme, although I've now learned that it's happened to thousands and thousands of parents, the secret gender and sex club for my sixth grader. But they had started planting seeds in her head since we moved her here in fourth grade, but I can only imagine that would have started in preschool. It's subtle pronoun conversation, the boy using the girls' locker room, books about transgenderism that otherwise seem okay at face value. Like, my daughter got assigned a book called George at 11 years old. I didn't open the book. I later learned it was 100% about a little boy who wants to become a girl. It talks about porn and chopping off his body parts and kissing boys and wearing girls' underwear. And it was assigned reading. And even me, who's a pretty involved parent, it slipped right under my nose. And so I think a lot of parents can't even detect the way their children are being groomed and indoctrinated with gender ideology starting in preschool.
I want to talk about an event that's coming up, and I think if I can have just 1 minute, I'm going to be able to send this up so that everybody can see this. I think it's really, really critical for people to know what's going on. You have just put out for people, I mean, really, this is what's happening. This is insane. You have what's called the Drag Christmas Spectacular, and I'm going to post this up on the screen here in just 1 second. That's happening in Fort Collins. Can you talk a little bit about what is this and what are they planning on doing? What is going to happen on December 21st? Who are these people that are putting it on, and what is this?
Well, welcome to the upside down clown world. that is Colorado. And again, Jared Polis has created an environment in this state where the people who are putting on this show and people like them feel empowered and emboldened to do these things out in the open and involve children, and they're praised for it. They're not held to account. So this is not the first time this show has been put on. It's just the first time people are paying attention to me exposing it. But it's being put on by the Unitarian Church in town, which is one of the biggest useful idiots for the globalist agenda, which Pat Stryker lives here in Fort Collins. Can only assume she's a billionaire. She's one of the main forefunders of the transgender movement globally. And she's absolutely using this town as the epicenter of this transgender agenda. But they're putting on a sexualized drag show with performers like Polyamor, who even says, I'm only 18 plus because I'm gross. What is it? The Magnesia guy who says he's a trash goblin with no butt-shaking trash goblin with no class. It features Silent Wellington, the genderqueer shape-shifting blood witch, who was invited in to groom my daughter and then was also hired to train all of the teachers in our school district about the importance of medicalizing gender-confused children. They're featuring counselors whose main goal, they say on their website, is to make sure kids have access to gender-affirming care. And it's all a fundraiser for their nonprofit called Rainbow Villages, which again was one of the many organizations that is raising money to pay to relocate TQ plus individuals to Northern Colorado. They're just making it worse. And this is, again, all ages discount. You're showing this is an advertisement from my child's groomer, Splash, or also known as Skittles for kids 2 to 10. And she's advertising an all ages discount for what is very clearly a sexualized, inappropriate drag show taking place at the altar of a church. It's blasphemous for one, but it's also wildly inappropriate for kids.
This is really incredible. So people who are watching right now and you're saying, what do we do? The reason they get away with doing this stuff is because we do nothing. Because we say it doesn't matter if we show up, it doesn't matter if we say we don't like it, it's the law, they allow them to do it. I can tell you firsthand, it does matter. You want to bring as much attention to these people who are trying to use the system to pervert and groom children. I think one of the saddest things is the confusion and the denigration of the innocence of these kids through these drag queen shows. They know what they're doing. This isn't just dress up. This isn't just play, acting, whatever. It, like you said, everything has a sexual nature to it. Everything is about sex when it comes to drag shows, and everybody knows that, and we always have. So for them to all of a sudden gaslight all of us and tell us we don't know what we're talking about, drag is just fun. It's just fun for kids. It just gives them another opportunity to explore themselves and figure out who they really are. No, this is all about sexual exploitation of children. And we've watched it. We've all seen the videos of the kids dancing and gyrating and adults throwing money at them. I mean, this can only go on if you all tolerate it. This is how this stuff goes on. If we don't have dads who are bringing other dads together to stand outside this church and declare that this is not okay, we don't support you. We're going to be here every time you do this. We're going to be calling you out, posting your names up. You guys want to clearly be famous? Let's post you up. If this is what the nature of what they're going to do is to go after children specifically, which is what the all ages means, you guys. It means there's going to be lots of kids there, and I can only imagine. It's bothered me so much, these all ages drag shows, because I know that they are pimping out kids. I know they are. And anyone who thinks they're not, and they're just like, they're just the nicest people, they're just dressing up. Oh no. No. They're pimping out these kids. These kids will suffer unbelievably.
And to make matters worse, this isn't just a church who's doing a thing that's abhorrent. This pastor has a queer sex ed program that starts at birth. It's called Our Whole Lives. Actually, Gays Against Groomers just exposed it today on their X account. It's called Our Whole Lives, or OWL, and it goes from birth until late adulthood. And so they are teaching babies and toddlers about gender ideology and sexuality, and promoting it like it's a wonderful thing. And I've seen parents in this town in various groups celebrate it and promote it, and get together and bring their 4-year-olds together to learn about gender ideology and sexuality in this church. But he's also a registered foster parent in the state of Colorado. And our local paper, which is a USA Today affiliate, the Coloradan, actually wrote a piece that glamorized him for it. that featured he and his husband and talked about how they get other people's children access to medical care, no questions asked. They glamorized it like he was doing a wonderful thing. So he's got a network, and we have missing children in this community who have been trafficked by this network of people who are still missing over a year later, innocent little girls who are swept up into this. So it's not just a drag show. It goes so much deeper than that.
And so I mean, I'm looking at this commercial. We've got this pulled up. Gays Against Groomer has put this up on here. Our whole lives aimed at babies and starts at birth, with advertisements geared towards kindergartners. And we're seeing contraceptives. We're seeing gender ideology, identity, sexuality. Baby, since when are babies sexual?
When he talks about how he went through the program, so that post there on the bottom right is a post from this pastor who says he went through the AL program and it legit changed his life, allowing him to navigate sex as a child without shame. So clearly he was sexually abused by the church, and we know what happens when
I was going to say, I want to see his laptop. Mm-hmm.
No, me too. People need to call the police. This is not just a show happening on private property. There's something much deeper happening here, and he's pretty open about it.
Wow, because he feels that he will be protected. I mean, at the end of the day, Reverend Sean thinks he will be protected. And that's the most jarring thing I hope people walk away from hearing your story and hearing what's happening in Colorado. Jared Polis has created a state where, as long as you are a deviant, as long as you are a pervert, as long as you are actively seeking to destroy the innocence of children, you will be protected. And we've watched it happen. I mean, I go back to those of you who are from Colorado who remember the Denver school board member, what's his name? Tay or
Tay, yeah.
Tay Anderson. This guy literally was pimping out CPS kids. Literally, I mean, it was like reading the Franklin scandal of Denver, Colorado. I couldn't believe it. The stories the girls were telling were the exact same stories I had read of the same type of scandal in another state. And it was Tay Anderson. No real investigation was done. These girls were never taken care of. They were never protected. Everything just went away magically. And Tay Anderson lived to exploit more young girls for another day. And we're talking about a guy that was hosting parties, taking girls who are in the foster care system to be the treats for the evening. I mean, it's Diddy stuff. It's crazy.
He remained in a leadership position that was making decisions for children. And I should point out that this Unitarian church in my community, half of my school board belongs to that church or serves on their board, as does the vice principal of the school where my daughter was groomed. And I found communications of them trying to get the Be More Gay, Be More Trans campaign that they run into our public school system. So our whole school board has been captured by this church and is pushing this ideology in our schools. It's not just in the church.
I hope that a year down the road that we do not hear that the entire time they were running a child trafficking ring. But this is the kind of stuff that you read about, and this is the kind of actions they're doing in the books. And then you find out all the children they've abused, exploited, sold, all the things that they've done to them. I think I'm sorry. I'm kind of, I'm a little shook right now. Literally, this is the path forward. This is what it looks like. If you map out these organizations that end up being these horrific pedophile rings, this is what they are, and this is what they do. So, I guess I'll say allegedly for this group, but I think this looks like a total pedophile program, an absolute pedophile program. And so this event, I'm just going to share it one more time. And for those who are watching, if you sit by in this area at Fort Collins and you do nothing, it's on us, you guys. We live in this time where we have all this information. You're told exactly what's going on. Erin lived this with her daughter. They targeted her daughter at school. And the same people involved in this horrible event that's going to take place on the 21st are the same people that tried to destroy her daughter. They're the same people, but you can't sue them. You can't bring criminal charges against them because Jared Polis has made sure that Colorado is a sanctuary state for pedophiles. That's what's happened here.
I call it the school to kidnapping pipeline. And it's really scary to think how close we came. You know, they called CPS on us immediately after our incident happened because we weren't supportive. Like, we came that close. And I've connected with parents in our community. I connected with a dad in the neighboring school district, Thompson District, who had a 17-year-old trafficked. What they do is they got her in the school. They secretly transitioned her at school for 2 years without his knowledge. Then the Splash organization, which is my daughter's groomer, was brought in. And what they do first is they try CPS claims. They made false CPS claims against both parents. When those were cleared, they then coached the little girl to run away. They coached her to shave her head, drain her bank account, and turn off her location services. And she was hidden in plain sight here in our community for almost 3 weeks before the dad was able to recover her. So it is a trafficking pipeline. I can confirm that for certain.
Wow. Can you imagine? I mean, really, can you imagine how things could have been? And for parents who are listening, the Skittles program and the Splash program, do not send your children there. Do not send. It is all sexual. It is all grooming. It is all about being gay, being queer, being trans. I mean, that's all it's about. It's right out there in the open. And I'm having the hardest time understanding why people do not see this. What is it to be those things? It is all about your sexuality. Children are not sexual. They are not. And they never should be. This should never be an issue. I can't understand why seemingly reasonable adults are allowing this to continue to go on. Why Jared Polis is not called out by the Five. Why he's not called out by Dana Perino on Fox News. Why is he allowed to continue to be this progressive, business-minded libertarian governor when he's literally leading the charge on the sexual exploitation of children across the country and how to do it using the law?
Yeah. We're the blueprint. They literally, I encourage people to read the book called The Blueprint, because Colorado was captured by 4 billionaires, including Pat Stryker, including Jared Polis. As you mentioned, he paid for his seat, and he helped pay to flip the state blue. And they've used us as this prototype for how to take a perfectly purple state, very, like you said, libertarian-minded, live and let live state, and radically flip it. And no one has pushed back, seemingly. We're just going down this trajectory and no one's stopping it.
I mean, I think that people who push back are made to look crazy. I mean, normally it doesn't stick, or, when there has been some reason, but I think we just have to keep at it. And so I really do want to encourage parents and people living in this community in Fort Collins and parents in Colorado. Listen, it's not a safe place for your kids. Erin, I want to give you the last word here. If you could say anything to parents who are listening right now and they love their kids, they want to protect their children, and they're thinking to themselves, this would never happen to me. I know my teachers, I know my local school, this would never happen. Can you just speak to them?
Yeah. First and foremost, get your kids out of government schools. Get them out. I'm a parent of Christian school, conservative charter, and homeschool, and it requires sacrifice. But you either sacrifice for your kids or you are sacrificing your kids to this woke system on the altar of woke ideology. So there is no sacrifice more worth making than getting your kids out of public schools. But also join local groups, get engaged. I run Protect Kids Colorado here in our state. We keep people up to date with what's happening in the legislature. We run Counter Citizen Legislature. Join your Moms for Liberty, your Moms for America, your local parent group. There's just so much strength in numbers. And one of the best things I ever did was just uniting with about 8 other parents who were like-minded, and we helped keep each other informed and look into what's happening. There's so much power in connecting with people who think like you do and want the best for their kids.
It's incredible work that you've done. If you guys have not seen the movie, The Art Club, right? Art Club movie, excuse me, Art Club movie, you have to watch it. You have to see what you're up against, and you can't ignore it. You cannot ignore the plight of the children that are happening all across the country. And by the way, as just a little cherry on the top here, we have no trafficking division, no human trafficking division in Colorado anymore. Jared Polis dissolved that in his first 60 days in office. It was closed for remodeling, never to open again. So let that sink in. There's no place for these parents to go. There's no place for those who are being exploited in Colorado to turn to. And I believe that's by design. Erin Lee, thank you so much for being with us. I really, really appreciate you. And I can't tell you, I mean, I know you have helped so many parents, and not just in Colorado, but across the country. And your daughter, what a gem, what a beautiful, beautiful young lady. I'm so thankful that God gave you the wit and the wisdom to figure out how to handle this and walk you through so that you could truly be a blessing for so many others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, wow. This is what's happening. You can't run from it. You can't hide from it. Trump getting in office isn't going to fix it, because you know why? Because states run themselves. They have their own laws. They have the things that they protect because they have a certain interest. And in Colorado, in California, New Hampshire, Maine, of course, all the blue states, Oregon, Washington, we've seen all this happening. But as Erin pointed out, it's happening in the quote conservative states as well, because there's an interest in the exploitation of innocence. And it will continue unless if you take a stand. Remember, all that's necessary for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do absolutely nothing. See you guys back here soon.